The film begins as a young college student, Chloe Steele, calls her mother Irene from the hall and tells her that she will be home soon. She then asks to speak to her father, but Irene replies that he is not home at the moment. It is revealed that Chloe is going to New York for her father's birthday, hoping that the whole family can celebrate together, but her pilot father Rayford has been suddenly called to London. Disappointed by the news, she asks his mother to check which flight he will be on. Irene then gives him the flight number, and Chloe realized that flight was leaving JFK Airport, so she decided to wait in the lounge, hoping to chat with her dad before he flew away while she headed towards the lounge. Chloe saw a famous TV host, Cameron Williams, nearby. There were a few people around her, including a middle-aged woman holding a book, as she was a journalist who regularly reported from the front lines of some disaster. She asked him if he read the Bible. Cameron guessed that she was a religious person and joked that he did too, but not as much as she did. The woman smiled at his joke and told him that Matthew 24 verse 7 is a verse in the Bible that talks about famine causing disasters and war being omens, but before she could finish her sentence, Chloe interrupted the conversation and asked the woman if God knew about all these bad things. Didn't he prevent them from happening? The woman replied that God created the earth to be perfect, but it was man's fault that it is now a disaster, refusing to take this generalization as an answer. Chloe said that many innocent people who have done nothing wrong in their lives are also being punished. She then points out the stupidity of believing that God loves all people when he refuses to help them in times of war and famine. When the woman has no objection to this, Chloe walks away slightly embarrassed by his sudden criticism. It is obvious that a young college student is an atheist. Outside, Captain Rayford drives into the airport parking lot. He sees a young flight attendant in Durham, so he quickly takes off his wedding ring and walked towards his hat, not knowing that he was married, and there was obvious romantic tension between the two, after which they entered the airport lounge together. Meanwhile, Cameron is quite impressed by Chloe's questions about blind faith and religion. He approaches her at the airport cafe and the two begin to chat. Cameron thanks her for saving him from the religious woman who calls her crazy, but in response, Chloe points out that she is just rehearsing for her mother, who is also a crazy religious woman. She then explains that she is waiting for someone. This makes Cameron assume that she has a boyfriend, which makes him a little uncomfortable, and he tries to back out of the conversation, but she reveals that she is actually waiting for her dad. She then sees his dad walking towards the lounge by a pretty flight attendant. Rayford also notices her and awkwardly tells Hattie that he will join her soon. He then walks towards Chloe and the father and daughter hug shortly after. Rayford sees Cameron standing nearby and recognizes him as the famous TV host. He asks if the two are dating, but Chloe later denies it to the journalist. He apologizes and says that he has important work to attend to next. Chloe and Rayford sit down to chat. It is revealed that Rayford had no idea that she was going to New York. When Chloe expressed her wish to celebrate her birthday at home with the whole family, he pointed out that it was too late to cancel the flight, and the two then discussed Irene, who has become deeply religious in the past days. Turns out that the father and daughter can't stand being lectured to all day about Irene's faith, and the constant discussions about religion have become so invasive to the other family members that Chloe rarely comes home, while Rayford likes to be as busy as possible. After a brief conversation, Chloe asks why he's so close with the flight attendant, but Rayford brushes the subject off and assures her that everything is fine between him and her mom. He then gave her the keys to his car and said that he had to catch flight later. He said goodbye to his mom and left to meet Hattie, who had been desperately waiting for him for about minutes later. Cameron once again approached Chloe, who was still at the cafe. He asked if everything was okay. She expresses her frustration at not being able to spend time with the family. The two then briefly discuss religion and how people will continue to look for the good even when they're having a hard time right after. Cameron gives Chloe his number and leaves, as he is also flying to London. Is on the same flight as Captain Rayford will be flying. In the next scene, Chloe arrives home and sees her mother and her younger brother. Then they started a conversation, but the mother quickly changed the subject to God. She explained how she prayed for Chloe to come back and God answered her prayers. But this only made Chloe angry, and she abruptly left there. Her younger brothers chased after her. She and the two decided to go to the mall. I swear Captain Rayford boarded the plane and immediately began flirting with Hattie. You know, I was told my penis was shaped like that plane. As departure time approached, he made his way to the cockpit where the co-pilot wished him a happy birthday. On the plane, a big challenge. A gentleman tries to put his luggage in the overhead compartment. A Middle Eastern man stands up and offers to help, but the shorter gentleman starts yelling back. He points out that just because he's short doesn't mean he needs voluntary help. Just because I know a loan doesn't mean I know how to give it to you. FOC. Right after that, the flight takes off for London. Meanwhile, at the mall, Chloe told her brother that she met her father at the airport this morning. She lied that Rayford talked a lot about him and loved him deeply. Then she hugged her brother, saying that one day he would become a great baseball player. But in this touching moment, the boy suddenly disappeared into thin air, leaving only his clothes and bag falling to the ground. Inexplicably, Chloe looked around in confusion and saw that the same thing happened with all children and some adults in the mall. The scene then changes to the plane, where the same thing happens. The children are gone, and some adults, including the co-pilot, are gone as well, leaving his clothes behind. This terrified the passengers, and some men ran to the pilot's cabin for answers, but Rayford increased the cabin pressure and knocked off the oxygen masks. This caused everyone to immediately return to their seats. The sole pilot of the plane, Rayford, ordered everyone to fasten their seatbelts and put on their oxygen masks. He then tried to radio for help, but was unable to contact anyone, although he did not realize it yet. Some people in the control tower have also disappeared without a trace. He takes out his cell phone and tries to call home, but no one answers. When he gets back to the mall, Chloe frantically searches for her brother while she watches her clothes on an unmanned car suddenly crashes through the front window. This causes absolute chaos inside the mall, and worse, looters start stealing money from the people who disappeared. After a while, Chloe confusedly dodges the increasingly hostile atmosphere and heads towards the parking lot. But even here, the situation seems to be a crowd of people looking for their lost loved ones. As Chloe heads towards her father's car, a small plane crashes into it. Panics, she runs out into the street where she notices a school bus coming right in front of her. Chloe runs to help her, but realizes that the bus is empty. It's shocking that this movie was released same year as the rest inside the plane. Rayford normalizes the pressure as everyone returns to their seats. Passengers then remove their oxygen masks and begin arguing about what could have happened to another wormhole theory about alien abduction, and passengers, only thanks to invisibility, are given while waiting. Chloe eventually realizes that the entire town has fallen into chaos. Although she doesn't know what happened, she guesses that her brother might have been taken to a nearby hospital, so she runs to the local hospital and sneaks through all the chaos through the back door. She was horrified to find the room where the newborn was being held was completely devoid of any nurses, who then appeared and told him that all the hospitals across the country were experiencing the same phenomenon. This means that all the children in the world will probably disappear in the next scene. Rayford discovers that his co-pilot has a watch with John 3 verse 16 written on it. He also discovers that the other flight attendant, who also disappeared, had a Bible study note in her notebook. This gives him a sudden realization, and he remembers how his wife talked about a biblical event called the rapture. In this event, all those who believed in God, as well as the overwhelming number of children, will believe in God, are young enough to voluntarily reject God, will disappear from the earth and be taken to heaven. She was right. Rapture happened. That's why all the believers in disappeared while the non-believers in remained, which suits Rayford. There's no drinking or adultery in heaven. Later, Rayford tries to tell Hattie that he's married, but she doesn't take the news well. In the cockpit, Cameron sees fluid leaking from one of the wings, and it quickly catches fire. Terrified, he rushes into the cockpit and reports it to Rayford. They realize it's a fuel leak, and they're deep in New York. Chloe walks into her mother's church. To get answers, she meets a pastor who explains that it is the rapture and that all those who disappeared have gone to heaven. Additionally, the non-believers currently stuck on earth will face several years of darkness before being judged by God, which predictably angers Chloe, and she points out that the pastor himself is also left behind. Means that he does not believe in the words he preached elsewhere in the plan. Rayford told Cameron, who had now taken over the co-pilot's seat, that the fire near the wing would eventually go out, but the leak would leave them with just enough fuel to get back to New York. However, they had bigger problems. Unable to contact with the control tower at JFK Airport, desperate for news of his family, Rayford asked Cameron to call his daughter. To his great surprise, the journalist revealed that he was trying to do so. Over the past few hours, clearly had fallen in love with Chloe. After some time, Rayford finally managed to contact with someone at the control center. but the operator explained that the airport was full of debris and he had no idea where his plane would land. He tried to find a solution. Rayford asks to contact Guardia Airport, also in New York, but the radio operator reveals that every airport around the world is experiencing this sudden and strange chaos. This makes Rayford nervous, and he realizes that the situation is more serious than he thought. How bad does he think it is? However, he decides to go to JFK and try to somehow land the plane because it is the safest option at the time. Cameron then goes to the passenger cabin where a woman points a gun at several people and demands that they explain to her what is going on. It is revealed that she is the wife of a famous football player who was traveling with his young daughter, who disappeared while she was sleeping, blinded by fear. She accuses everyone of kidnapping her. The girl, luckily Cameron calms her down and explains why she thinks everyone is plotting against her. The woman eventually breaks down and reveals that her husband is a toxic person who constantly accuses her of trying to take his daughter away from him. Now that the child is gone, she will have to face the possibility of him abusing her at the time. Another passenger, a woman with a shadow and needle marks on her arm, suddenly stood up, telling of the biblical event called the Rapture, where all lost people were taken to 44. Heaven knows nothing. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Chloe is worried that her father's plane might also crash as her mother and brother are also missing. She no longer sees any meaning in life, so she climbs to the top of the Manhattan Bridge and decides to jump. On the other hand, Cameron returns to the cockpit and takes his seat. He eventually joins Chloe, who is about to do something stupid. Luckily, she stops when she sees the call and quickly picks up Chloe, bursts into tears, and thanks her for calling in time. Cameron then hands the phone to Rayford, who apologizes to his daughter and reveals that her mother was right, then explains that the plane is out of fuel and he doesn't know if they can land him safely with a new will to live. Chloe told her father that she would find a place to land. She quickly got off the bridge and went to a construction site near highway with a nearby truck. She cleared all the barriers in place so that had enough space to land the plane. Then she called Raymond, who guided her to light up the entrance to the landing strip so he can see it from the plane. In a stroke of genius and luck and a severe lack of logic, Chloe uses fuel from a crashed tanker and causes a massive fire that's enough for Rayford to see the sight lines of the structure, and he flies the plane towards it with flying colors. Despite a chaotic slide that destroys the landing gear, the plane comes to a safe stop in the final scene. The passengers disembark and one of them exclaims that the worst is behind them. However, Chloe says that their troubles are just beginning as she hugs her father. We're alive, yes, baby, but we're going to hell too. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Leave a comment about your favorite movie and we will make it next. Thanks for watching.